Hey everyone, wanted to go over some of the sounds that I made for the first week so far of the Airwiggles audio challenge. It's been an interesting challenge doing something completely different every day, and some of the stuff just completely out of my wheelhouse. Never done some of these types of sounds before, so it's good to get practice in doing a lot of different types of things and seeing what ideas you can come up with, especially within a time limit. I tried to take on the 45-minute time limit as much as I could, and went over a couple times, and sometimes I went under, but I tried to not, spend, too long on any one sound and just kind of get a nice first draft going. But I wanted to go over the first week of sounds, so the first 7 days of stuff, and I plan on doing these every week or so, to try to just kind of go over what I've done to sort of break down what was going through my mind and how I approached each one of these problems, because they're all very different. So let's dive into it. In the description, I'm going to include links where you can find the games and the artists behind these videos. And these have been some wonderful source material to work with in terms of trying to create something too. And all of that's going to be in the description below if you want to check out either the games or the artists. First of which is from a game called Fade. Monster sounds, I'm a little bit weak on. I've done it a couple times. I want more practice in it because it is a lot of fun, and it's one of those things where I want to be able to try to figure out what are some more interesting ways of creating monster sounds other than just pitching around stuff and adding in different textures that are just kind of creepy and just sound off to the ear. I'm going to talk about the guy in the foreground first. Nothing really too complicated with him. It's just mainly Foley sounds that I found around. This is just footsteps. And with the markers that I have, I've timed them out. Like, I'll go in frame by frame with stuff and try to, one frame at a time, find where exactly would this be. Like, I'll look in the video and see, I think it would be around here, put a marker there, and I'll go like find the exact frame. Next is going to be this, which is some Foley that I recorded with some jeans in front of the microphone, just to add some texture with the clothing moving around. This here is just basically this little piece of a necklace that I've had. It has this nice little ringy thing to it that sounds just pretty neat. And then I also have some metal dice that I kind of just messed around with. I want to talk about the ambience real quick, because all it is really just some wind chime samples that I found. But what I ended up doing is I put them through an EQ that just cuts out a lot of the lows that are in it, and then run it through 100% wet through the ROM reverb. I use ROM a lot if I'm kind of wanting more dreamy sort of reverb sounds. So that's why I used it to emulate the particles and lights that are kind of happening around the scene to kind of give it this ethereal sort of sound. And then the rest of this is just the monster in the background. There's a lot of layers to this because I love layering stuff. Layering just kind of makes things sound more impactful. Bunch of tree sounds, like creaking and breaking sounds, just especially even here at the beginning whenever he's not really even doing that much. And what I wanted to do is I wanted it to be able to kind of build whenever he moves a lot more to get that scream, because I felt that a lot of that breaking and crunching sound would happen whenever he moves a lot more. So by itself, it sounds like this. And for the scream, all I really did was just record myself multiple takes, and this is just everything exploded out onto different tracks of just adding layers to that scream and pitching it down. And all of that together is going to sound like this. But I feel like the part of it that really sold this were these pig squeal sounds that I added as like an upper texture. I felt like adding some kind of creepy shrill sound to the top of it would really just, bring it back together. Day 2 was a game called CyberRush, which is a racing roguelite? I have never in my life attempted vehicle sounds before. I don't know if it's just something that I never ever end up getting the chance to do. I just never ended up doing it. I just pulled a lot of different car sounds in for this. So altogether, these 3 tracks right here are the tires squeaking as it goes between lane to lane. For the car itself, I have a lot of different layers of stuff going on here, but the main things would be this right here, which is just, you know, sports car stuff revving. I have a pitch shifter on there as well that's kind of adding some extra sort of rev to it, with also a little bit of a distortion, like a kind of slightly fuzzy, drivey distortion on there. And then up here, these 3 sort of modules I have here in Phase Plant, which are a couple different parts of, I think it says a Toyota GT 86 right here up for these layers. This is just a sampler right here. And then here is just a random wavetable synth. This is the main core of the vehicle sound, is just this one MIDI note running these 3 little modules in Phase Plant. To add on to that, some other cyberpunk sort of layers I've got going on here is this is just a riser. Like, this is just like an EDM riser sort of thing that I have building up the sound. And then this one here as well. I think this here as well is sort of like a cyberpunky sort of sound I found. Here are all those little impacts for whenever stuff hits the car to kind of build it up. And you'll notice here I also have panning for whenever it flies in at different directions. You can hear it move in the stereo space. And then this last part here is whenever the camera changes from these 2 perspectives, I kind of felt like that was significant enough to have like this big impactful sound effect. So that's what I have this guy right here to just kind of emphasize that when it all comes together. Everything is just running through another plate reverb here, and then the Event Horizon clipper. If I want to make something just sound like it hits harder, that's typically where I would go to. Day 3, we're going away from the more complex sounds into something a little bit more simple. Well, simpler, with Helen. All right, so the first thing I want to go over actually is the footstep sound. So we're going to jump down to here, and believe it or not, what I'm using for the footstep sounds is Weaponizer. All I did was initialize the plugin so that it was just straight clean, and then threw in some grass footstep sounds that I had. And all it's doing is essentially doing what Fmod or Wise would do. And every time one of these MIDI notes hits, it's picking a random grass footstep sound that I have, and then, you know, picking a little bit of pitch variations. The Weaponizer is doing perfectly fine for me, but, you know, I'm getting the footstep sounds. It works. I found some servo samples in one of my libraries, which was perfect for this, for the movement of the character, because all I was able to really need to do was just find something that worked and then warp it to this length that I needed it to be. So this isn't the original length of this here, but I went in, you know, figured out the frames again, because I have it set to, you know, a grid based on the frames, and just kind of figured it out of like, how long is this character turning for? And even for this one here, I added some extra pitch shifting through automation here to add some of that extra sort of, you know, whimsy to the whole thing whenever the character turns back around. Some extra little bleep bloop sounds while the character's walking around. So this whole section here is all of the extra sounds that the character is making here, and I want to point this out first, is that I have this all running through a folder, basically like an aux bus, in which I have this EQ that whenever the character is turned around, it high passes it so that a lot of those low frequencies are, you know, taken away. So I felt like it would make more sense in this space that whenever the character turns around, since they're facing away from the camera in this instance, that's going to sound different if the sounds are projecting forward from like the front of the robot. If it's projecting back away from the camera, it's going to sound different. It sounds more realistic whenever the character turns around. And it's such a small detail that I don't think anyone would really pick up on, but I love it. It really feels like it's accurate to what's going on in here. The alert sounds pretty simple, just kind of found some sounds that worked with it and, you know, messed around with it. I added some distortion onto this one, to the actual like beep 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 sound. I have some processing here as if the character is kind of like trying to figure out what's going on there, processing, like analyzing the data to kind of see what's going on here. And this is also something where I have a little bit of pitch shifting on that works with like the servo sound up here to just add that extra little data silliness, that happiness, the cuteness to it all. The ambience is pretty simple. I don't think I really have anything too complex going on here. I think this is just some random meadow ambience that's going on. And then here I have some sort of like fantasy crystal sounds. Again, I'm doing the same thing that I did on the first day with sounds by throwing stuff into the ROM reverb and then having that, not at 100% for this one, this is pretty much just straight default, but having this as an interesting little kind of fantasy aspect to it. Since we have a lot of the foliage here that's kind of glowing, I wanted to have some sort of whimsy to it all. And at the end here, we just have this simple thing whenever the screen changes. Oh boy, this was a complex one. This one's from a game called Gravia, and shout out to the creator of the game who responded to a lot of people on the Airwiggles post about this, just kind of giving their feedback, and it was very cool to just have the developer just really come in and just critique your work, and you know, even retweeted, I believe, my sound on Twitter. So thank you. There's a lot going on here, and one of the things I want to talk about that was something that a lot of people brought up with mine is these metal creaking sounds, because one of the details I noticed about this is that these like metal beams, as the video goes on, just start bending, and I felt like having some really nice bending sounds in here. I definitely went more of like the horror direction with this one, and I'm very happy that I did. This one right here, I think, is holding most of the work for the actual chaos that's happening in this clip, and it's just a tornado. And I have some extra little textures in here going on, some extra sounds that just really emphasize everything, even just hitting specific moments where maybe there had been like a burst of like dust or something, or if there was a specific bigger movement, I just wanted to try to hit something like that to add a little bit more texture on top of the tornado sound that was already there. I have some more sounds here for the stuff at the end, little impactful stuffs. And then included in that was the little forklift that was dragging across the ground. Pretty sure all the black hole stuff's going on right here. So if we look at this right here, this is going to be the start of it with it flying out from the hand. And then we have just a bunch of these impact sounds and these little, again, going back to the EDM sort of like filter, the uplifter, downlifter sort of stuff. Just adding extra little power to it all. That's a sub drop there to add some more texture there. But here we have, yet again, Faceplant kind of coming in, adding some more of that otherworldly aspect to it all. And again, all of that's running through a plate reverb, and it's running through another Event Horizon clipper, which I thought I was actually hitting this a little bit harder, but I'm not. Oh boy, we got a simple one now. This one was a lot less complicated. I definitely came at this more from a realistic sort of side of it, with like a slight bit of cartooniness to it. A lot of other people went very cartoony with it, and I kind of realized maybe I should have leaned a little bit more into the silliness of it all. Because the extent of my silly is just really this little anime sound combined with a very, very basic faceplant patch that I made that's like not even really worth explaining. It's just that, like, that's literally all it is. And then a lot of this was just, you know, trying to make stuff line up with the animation. So again, going into finding that specific frame where stuff's happening. This one, that's the ball at the bottom, and I followed that with the animation. This, I used fixed item lanes so that I could keep it all in one track, but still have like stuff, you know, have its tails and all that. This one here is just glass. And then the ping pong ball, which really all I did here was, again, just, you know, take ping pong ball hits and then just line it up to where it would be in the animation. And then, you know, have it so that it got quieter over time. And then I glued it all together so it was just one clip that I could mess around with. The thing with this is with this whole video is I really wanted to focus on just mainly timing. I wanted things to be right on where it was happening in the video. Just using more silly little anime sounds that I had. I still had fun with it though. I really like the way this one turned out. I've said this a million times. I love ambiences, especially horror ambiences and creepy ambiences. And since this one was on Saturday, there was an extra challenge, if you chose to accept it, which was only using sounds from a selected folder. And I got my mileage out of it using every single sound in that folder. So for the background ambience of it all, I took one of the car sounds and used Reaper's version of Paul Stretch with it, which is yeah. There's also this creature growl sound. I don't even remember what this sounded like, but I did the same thing here of stretching it out, much like what I did up here. And I feel like it sounds really industrial, and I love the way that that just turned out. It was great. This ammo box one I just used for this fan. There's these little rock sounds that are in here. Ran it through some distortion. I used Faturator a lot. I don't know why it's the one I've been going to a lot for these. It's just been a lot of my go-to. Filtering a lot of the lows, hossing it to spread it out, and then again using ROM to just kind of put it in the background. I used the fireworks in a very similar way. I think these are pitched down basically almost 2 octaves, and this one's even 2.5 octaves. It kind of has almost like a screaming quality to it. And one more thing about this sound is that I'm running everything through this convolver right here. I don't remember what it was, but I threw one of the sounds in here as a impulse response into, you know, kilohertz convolver, and I'm adding that as a texture over top of everything because I find that convolvers are a really cool way of getting interesting textures. Without it, the whole thing sounds like this. Adding this in here, not at 100% mix, but it sounds pretty cool. Kind of adds a little bit of this high-end hiss that's in there, which it was a little much, so I added some smooth operator to kind of tame it a little bit. It adds this interesting sort of shriek to it all. All right, and the last one was this game called Bladesong. I did the challenge on this one as well, which was only using synthesized sounds. So if you notice at the top here, I have the global sampler script. All the sounds I used were just presets that you could find in Faceplant. Like, this is literally the only copy of Faceplant that's in the whole project. Kind of messed around with some of the presets that I found around in here, and that's how I ended up getting all of these sounds. I would sort of play them out, copy them in here, and then drag them into the project. For whenever it switches screens, I felt like it would be interesting to have some kind of version of like what sounds like an anvil or some kind of bell. So we have this mixed with this to kind of give this sound. And then the UI was just, you know, messing around with stuff, adding a little bit of textures and layers of stuff together. But the sword bend sounds, we're just kind of mixing a couple things together. I have a ring mod on this to maybe make it sound maybe a little bit more alien, maybe a little more metallic. And then this, I'm pretty sure it was just an alien-esque sort of preset that I added, you know, some tape distortion on as well. This one I feel like I definitely could have benefited from not, you know, doing the challenge to make it sound better, but the challenge was there for a reason, so I was just curious to see like what I could do with it, and this is how I decided to approach it. This has been a lot of stuff to kind of work with, and this is probably something that's got me super motivated to work on sound design. And then also seeing everyone else's interpretations really is kind of just seeing how creative everybody else would be with it. Like, what ideas stood out to me, like, oh, that sounds really cool. Oh, I didn't think about doing that. That would have been so cool. And just really feeling like that sense of community with everybody here. Thank you guys for checking this out. If you have any questions about any of the stuff that I did, leave them in the comments below. And again, all of the stuff that you've seen, games or art, all is going to be in the description below if you want to check out and support the creators behind, you know, what you've seen visually. Like and subscribe. I don't do that. I never say that in videos because it's just one of those YouTube things. But go ahead, like and subscribe if you like the video. Subscribe if you want to see, you know, me talk about next week's stuff. I'll see you guys around later.